Now let's get stuck into the news of the day with Sky News host and National Affairs editor of the Daily Telegraph, James Morrow. James, great to have you on the program.
Great to be here, Amanda.
Can I start with the piece... Oh, it's always good to be with you. Can I start with a piece you've got in the Daily Telegraph today? And it reads, Labor accused of cheating to tip scales in favour of the yes vote. I mentioned this yesterday with Warren Mundine and the supposedly new impartial ad encouraging people to vote in the referendum. But you found out some new details. Share them with us.
Well, yeah, that's right. So if you go to voice.gov.au, which is the government's official information site for the referendum, and you know, Anthony Albanese said we're not going to give any money to one side or the other. It's just going to be neutral down the line. But what do you find? You find that all of the language explaining the dot points about what the voice supposedly is and what the voice supposedly will do and why it is supposedly not something to worry about are all taken from the Reconciliation Australia website and have been written by a voice advocate who was part of the drafting process, Amanda. So, you know, how neutral is that?
Oh, that's shocking, isn't it? And presumably there's no counterbalancing contribution from Fair Australia or Recognise a Better Way?
No, of course not. It's all just, you know, it's going to do this. It's going to just give people a voice, and it's going to be empowering, and it won't have a veto power. And there's no talk about, you know, what Anthony Albanese said in his own words, which was that it would be a brave parliament indeed that did not heed the call of the voice.
Yeah, let's have a listen to the ad that was released by the government.
Australia is having a conversation about the referendum being held later this year.
So what's it about?
It's about whether we should change the Constitution to recognise the First Peoples of Australia by setting up an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice.
The voice will be a permanent body.
And it'd give independent advice to the Parliament and Government on matters that affect First Nations people.
Be ready for the conversation.
Visit voice.gov.au, authorised by the Australian Government, Canberra.
Fair bit of positivity there.
Well,
not a lot of talk about potential risks and drawbacks.
Well, not only that, I mean, well, yeah, it's not only, you know, all positive and happiness and sweetness and light there, but it's also misleading. I mean, right from the beginning, you know, it's saying it's going to recognize the First People by giving them this voice. No, sorry, it's two separate bits here. You know, do you recognize them in the preamble of the Constitution? And do you give them the voice? There's actually two elements to this whole thing. They're conflating the two and just saying, oh, look, it's just a nice thing to do. So it's, you know, basically a yes vote ad by stealth.
It's almost worse than giving money to the Yes campaign because it allows them to claim impartiality but yet use the same words as the Yes campaign and still use taxpayer funds for it. James, there's a story of yours that's just dropped on the Telegraph's website, and that is to say the City of Sydney Council has come under fire for pushing voice propaganda. Tell us more about that.
Well, look, it's not just that they're pushing voice propaganda. That's what, you know, lots of councils across the country are going to be doing. We all expect that. But what they've decided to do is go a step further, and they have just voted on and approved more than $500,000, Amanda, of ratepayers' funds going to banners, education campaign, communication strategy. We all love a good communication strategy. And, of course, events designed to spruik the voice. Now, of course, you know, Sydney's a mess. You know, there's potholes all over the place. You can't get the trash picked up half the time. And yet this is what they're going for. I mean, it's beyond the politics of, you know, whether or not we should have a voice or not. It's about also local government staying in its lane. It's rates, roads, rubbish, not rates, roads, referendum.
Be nice if they could focus on that rates, roads and rubbish.
Indeed.
Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has spent the day in Sydney and he's just given an address to a stadium full of Indian expats. He's here because he says he wants to take the relationship with Australia to the next level, including closer security and defence ties. Does this visit and his message have anything to do with China?
Oh, gosh, I don't know, Amanda. What do you think? Well, you know, as the government would like us to vote on the referendum, I would say yes. Yes, it does. Of course, it has a ton to do with China, but of course also it has to do with, you know, the very strong cultural ties between Australia and India. I can't imagine a leader from another nation coming out to Sydney and filling the Kudos Bank Arena with all sorts of people coming out to cheer on the president or the prime minister. I mean, so that's amazing. There's huge educational ties, business ties. As you mentioned earlier, there's a huge amount of economic ties in the amount of coal that we send to India to help to, you know, advance that country's economy. So the ties are really, really important. And, you know, I think the government has handled it pretty well. I note that they've just dropped that they're going to, they've just announced the board for a new Australian-Indian relations think tank, which again, I think is all to the good in those sorts of things. So yeah, it's a very important relationship. And this just helps cement that.